Who was Mungo Lady? Mungo Lady lived around 42,000 years ago along the shores of Lake Mungo. During this time period, Willandra Lakes in the presently named region of New South Wales was full of water and vegetation. It was not what it is now, a vast desert with little water, and the basins emptied and dried up, with little vegetation and animal life. Mungo Lady must have been a mother, daughter, and elder to many generations. She must have educated those younger about Aboriginal culture and about the Dreamtime and Aboriginal law. She must have been a gatherer while the men were hunters. Mungo Lady's body was cremated and buried in the Lunette. The lakeshore lunettes are where many Aboriginal ancestors rest. They are sacred to the Ninyampa, the Muti Muti, and the Bakantigi people. Mungo Lady's body must have been crushed, the bones burnt and burnt again, and then laid in the lunette to rest. Who was Mungo Man? Mungo Man also lived around 42,000 years ago. However, his remains were not discovered until after a couple of years after Mungo Lady's. He had a strong build, and this was likely due to the harsh hunter lifestyle that he must have lived. He lived to the age of about 50 years old and suffered from extreme arthritis. This is probably due to the fact that he was a spear thrower. This was necessary to hunt game in a time when megafauna was still present. He needed to feed his family and children during these harsh times, and this was one of the most prevalent ways at the time. His arthritis was so strong and so severe that he probably couldn't even extend his forearm the entire way. He must have had his elbows locked most of his life, and this was the same for many Mungo men. How was Mungo Lady found? In 1968, geologist Jim Bowler discovered a human jaw in the desert of the Willandra area. Upon more research, the human remains were to be Mungo Lady. How was Mungo Man found? In 1974, Jim Bowler discovered a human cranium in the Mungo Lake Lunette upon his further studies in this region. The remains were of Mungo Man who lived in Mungo Lake III. He was found the same way that it was thought many Aboriginal ancestors were buried. His bones were laid on their back, arms crossed on his front, and his body was sprinkled in ochre. This was thought to be the first Aboriginal traditional burial culture and ways. Mungo Man and Mungo Lady's current location. In 1992, Aboriginal elders from the three tribes had Mungo Lady returned to Mungo Lake. She was first with the Australian National University for studies and research. However, she was taken without the request and permission of the Aboriginal people. She is resting in a locked safe at Mungo National Park. Mungo Man remains at the Australian National University. The information that's been discovered from the remains of Mungo Lady and Mungo Man are valued by the indigenous Aboriginal people. However, they feel that Mungo Man's remains should be returned to the place that they were found. The Aboriginal people wanted Mungo Lady's remains to be returned to the Lunettes. However, due to erosion, it was not possible to have her body buried the same way. The tribes of Mungo Lake. The Ninyampa, Pakantiji, and Muti Muti tribes lived peacefully together occupying the Mungo Lake. The Muti Muti people, like all Aboriginals, believed that you could not marry someone of the same moiety. Moiety is the term used in Latin for half, and it was used the same way for the Aboriginals. This is the story of Wilekil and Wangi, of the Muti Muti people. During the time, the eagle Wilekil and crow Wangi were fighting four men from two opposing sides, and the four men also fought each other at the same time, and this kept on going for years. They would always mix themselves up in Wilekil and Wangi's fight, and Wilekil and Wangi could not deal with this any longer. Eventually, after a long period of time, Wilekil and Wangi said to these men that they will no longer fight because we are sick of it and cannot deal with these problems and issues that would always arise. Willekil picked out two of the men that were opposing one another. You two will now come together and forever remain as one. You will live in the river. Wangi also picked out the other two men from opposing backgrounds and said to them, you now two will also come together as one, and forever you will remain that way. You will live in the lagoon. This is how the freshwater mussels came about and why they are formed by two moieties, or two halves. The bigger mussels were ordered by Wikel to live in the river, and the smaller to live in the lagoons by Wangi. Since that time, the Muti Muti people governed the way that marriage was allowed by the Aboriginal people in this way. Thank you.